Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Black Lawyers Podcast. We have the pleasure today of interviewing Judge Carlos Moore, who is the new National Bar Association president. Thank you, Judge Moore, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We always jump into hot topics before we get into individual interviews. We love to highlight Black news stories that are trending. One of the stories right now that's trending is Kobe Bryant's family. I don't know how much our audience is aware. There's several legal cases going on, but the main legal case, his wife, Vanessa Bryant, is suing the police and LA police for their handling of the pictures of the bodies and things on the crash scene. And part of her claim is emotional distress. And so their legal team has now asked that they be examined. Her children, all of them who go under examination. There are a lot of people that don't like that because, not to state the obvious, but I mean, the way that her husband and daughter died so dramatically at the same time, it almost like it's obvious that it's emotional distress. So why do you think the attorneys are making her go under examination? I guess that's really my question to you. It just seems so obvious that this would be an emotional distress case.
Yes, the attorneys will likely try to get to the cause of the emotional distress. The death in and of itself, the sudden deaths of your son, your husband, and your daughter are going to be emotional. And so I believe the widow, Vanessa, is making a claim that she suffered additional emotional distress over and beyond what she would have suffered had the pictures and the body been handled properly. And so that's going to be a fine line to walk. And the attorneys are going to see just how well she can articulate this additional pain and suffering that she experienced by the mishandling of the pictures of the body. Because just whenever she found out that her husband was gone and her daughter was gone, she was going to suffer immense emotional distress. And it's going to be interesting to see if she can make a valid claim and articulate the additional distress it's caused.
And I found that interesting because I guess I didn't look at it that way. I like your explanation that it's not so much the stress of them passing away, it's the additional stress of how the photos and the bodies were handled. And so I think that makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure she has some of the best attorneys. So we will stay very, we will watch this case very, very closely because I know it will, it'll continue to play out in the news. She recently settled a potential lawsuit with her own mother over babysitting. Her mom tried to, imagine if you had your mom or someone try to sue you for all the babysitting she's done for your kids. So Vanessa just got through that, right? And now she's dealing with LA police with the photos. So I don't know if you were a Kobe fan, but I was a Kobe fan. So we wish her well in this particular suit, and we will be following it closely. Next up, we have Dr. Dre and his wife, and I won't go through the rabbit hole of details of the divorce. But right now, what's in the news is that, you're a judge. So when there's a divorce proceeding, there are different motions that happen throughout the proceeding. And so there are different things you have to serve upon the defendant and things like that. So she decided to serve him some additional papers at a funeral. So that's why it's trending, because it's like, if you had, the man, I think a couple of months ago was in the hospital, had an aneurysm. And right after that time, he said, you know what? I think at the time she wanted almost $1 million a month in, temporary spousal alimony. He actually temporarily just gave it to her. Now it's been reduced now back down to about $200,000 or $300,000 per month. But some people even felt like he was under duress making that decision, right? So I think this case he is Dr. Dre, so of course it's going to be in the news. But I think this case keeps making the news just because of how the parties are treating each other. I mean, what are your thoughts of her serving him at a funeral?
Yeah,
I
I
mean, I
think
know
it's
she knows he'll be there, but
cold. It was cold and callous, I believe. I mean, people need to maintain a sense of humanity and compassion, especially during a time of bereavement. And to serve somebody papers that allegedly you were once in love with at a funeral, I mean, that stinks to high heaven. And so I don't think she would have liked for him to do her like that if the tide or tables were turned. And so I think it's just very reprehensible that she did something like that. And I hope that she would do better in the future.
as a judge, have you ever had a case kind of so contentious with the parties to the point where it was just ridiculous? Have you had a time so far where the parties have been, and for our audience, could you just tell us what you preside over typically?
Yeah, I don't do family law. Thank goodness. I have municipal docket, so I do misdemeanors, traffic citations, domestic protection orders, initial appearances for felonies, preliminary hearings for felonies, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. And so have you ever had, a defendant or anyone just acting up in your courtroom and you had to, can you tell an audience a quick story?
Well, there are various instances where people act up in my courtroom. Luckily, I have some good bailiffs and police officers there. But a lot of the times, when individuals try to come in and act as their own attorney, it's quite comical. And I have to try to just stay professional. And sometimes I do believe they're suffering from mental illness, so I don't laugh at them. And then some of them was just very dramatic. I don't know if they suffer from mental illness or what, but they want to act like an attorney instead of going to hire one. So those are probably the most memorable occasions that I've had in my courtroom.
In your courtroom. Okay. Well, last but not least, speaking of people defending themselves, Cardi B is back in the news for her assault trial regarding either having some women that were allegedly dealing with her husband at the time or boyfriend at the time beat up. There is an assault charge, regarding her relationship with her now husband, Offset, where some women in a club were assaulted or beat up at the direction of her, long story short. So, again, people come into the courtroom regardless of the evidence. The famous saying is you're innocent before, you're innocent until proven guilty. So I guess, again, this is back in the news because obviously it's not resolved. I think they tried to make her, just take a plea, just to, let's just end this, take a plea. And she just refuses. She is pleading not guilty. What are your thoughts on, I guess in general, her pleading not guilty, but just generally speaking, when defendants are kind of pressured to take pleas, and is that sometimes maybe just in their best interest?
I guess it depends. Every case or every scenario is different. I'm not familiar with all of the evidence that may be out there against her, but even when the evidence seems insurmountable, people are sometimes able to still get out and be found not guilty if they go to trial. You never know if this will be jury nullification or whatever it may be. Maybe the juries just don't see things the way the lawyers see it. I know that R. Kelly, he just recently got convicted after several attempts. I mean, even with video evidence, and I thought that was just the best evidence. Most professionals think it's the best evidence. He was found not guilty of certain things years ago, and they had to come from a different vantage point this time, and he was convicted. But hope springs eternal. So she has a right to take her case to trial, and that's what she wants to do. I wish her the best. May the justice prevail.
Yes, or as the Hunger Games says, let the odds be in your favor. I don't know if you watched the Hunger Games movie. That line always sticks out in my head. Okay, well, now we're going to jump into Judges Moore's individual questions, because I know a lot of our listeners out there are obviously interested in becoming attorneys. We have a few people that actually want to become judges, which is a whole different role. And so tell us first, who was Carlos Moore before becoming an attorney judge? Like, who were you before? You high school, college, the things you're interested, like what was this path where you said, okay, I'm going to go down the law path? Like, what led you to that? Who were you before?
Okay, so as a young man, I've always been high school, junior high, uh, college, law school. I've always been very active. Been very government oriented student leader. I was student body president in junior high, high school, Black Student Union president 2 years in college. I was on the national board for the National Black Law Students Association. I did student government and as a senator in college. So I've always been very involved and active in whatever school or college I was at. So law was a perfect fit for me. I thought one time that I would become a physician, but law was what I was naturally good at. My political science classes, I was at the top of the class, graduated as a top political science student at the University of South Alabama. So I always wanted to stand for the little guy. Always give a voice to the voiceless. I've always been one that was not afraid to speak my mind. I don't parse my words. If I believe something, you're gonna know exactly where I stand. And folks that have known me from first grade to now, they'll tell you the same thing from various earliest age. It's no surprise that I did become a lawyer and now ultimately a judge.
And tell our audience, where are you from again? Where were you raised?
I was raised in Moss Point, Mississippi, on the Gulf Coast, near Biloxi and Gulfport.
Okay, great. And I think you answered my next question in terms of why did you choose to attend law school? When you were, what was the name of your law school again?
The Florida State University College of Law.
Okay, and what was your favorite law school class there?
I would say my favorite law school class probably was torts. I like torts. I like criminal procedure. I like constitutional law. I was not too big of a fan of property, but that was one of my best classes grade wise. But yeah, I hated civil procedure, so I would say torts, constitutional law, and criminal procedure.
Okay, great. And we're I don't know, we're almost 80 to 100 years into the profession, and Black lawyers still make up about only about 5% of the profession. Like, the number for whatever reason won't really go up, and a lot of times people say, well, I don't look like what a person would think a lawyer would look like. A lot of times people face discrimination, and that's kind of enough for them to not want to be interested. And part of the reason why I'm doing this podcast is to put more faces that look like ours out there, so it can encourage those that are interested in the legal profession, whether lawyers, paralegals, judges, to encourage that. And so, is there ever a moment you can tell our audience where maybe you faced discrimination while you were in law school, maybe in a class, a professor, another student? And if not, have you faced it in terms of kind of, transitioning from attorney to judge?
As a law student, nothing stands out dramatically. I had a lot of support. I've always focused on the support. I've always seen a glass as half full, so half empty. So I got through law school with the support of upperclassmen in the Black Law Students Association. They would pass down outlines. We were there for each other. So no matter if the professor was tougher on the minorities, I didn't make a big deal about it. I was prepared, fully prepared. I did my own attended class, my own notes, and I had the advice of my upperclassmen, and I got through just fine. In law as a lawyer, I was the first African-American attorney in Grenada, Mississippi to integrate a law firm. And so I had to go through that challenge of being the first and paving the way in small town Mississippi. That lasted about 4 or 5 years before I started my own firm. And now all of the firms are back to either Black or white. But I was glad to have that experience because I can work across the aisle, I can work across whatever demographic it is. So I'm glad to have that balance. But my heart has always been. Go ahead.
It's interesting that you said that you were the first Black attorney in that particular firm. So were you nervous because you kind of knew as soon as you got there you would be the only one? How do you handle that? Because you have a lot of students that go, maybe they've been around mostly minorities their whole life, and then they go to law school and they're literally the only one in the classroom, and maybe one of few. How do you handle that? What is your advice on handling that?
Yeah, again, I turn to people that look like me outside the firm. So I would attend. I've been involved with the National Bar Association for over 20 years. So my first year law school up to now, I've been a member. So I would go to conventions, and that would give me the strength, the energy, the fuel to go fight another year and face the demons and the battles I was going to have to face as the lone minority in my firm and one of the few in the city. And so I would just go refuel year after year and come back and fight another year.
Well, I think that's great advice for those to seek resources and mentorship outside of. I'm going to do a quick plug. I know you're going to plug it anyway, but National Bar Association is a great place to start if you are, a Black law student or even a new Black attorney. They say, what is it? Your network is your net worth. So this is a great place to start. He's one of is the newest president of the NBA. So we encourage everyone who's listening on this podcast to take a look at membership and the events that they have coming up. The Black Lawyer Podcast is hoping to partner, obviously, in the near future with the NBA. So just a quick plug, if you're listening and you're looking to get some mentorship and some networking, that's a great place to start. Along those lines, in addition to mentorship and networking, what else do you think we can do to grow the legal profession with more Black attorneys, Black judges? What else can we do at this point? Because here's the thing, and I say this all the time, poor little Generation Z, because my niece is Generation Z, and I'm sure you know some Generation Zers. My issue with Generation Z, which is basically the next group that we would need to encourage, right, to become attorneys and judges, they love instant gratification. Let's start there. Two, they don't like to do a lot of work on the front end, but they want a big result. And so what doesn't help is you have social media, right? Even maybe you didn't want to do social media before, but as you can see, even as a judge and being the NBA president, you see how important it is. So their whole lives is what it looks like online. And so, God forbid, go to college for 4 years, 3 years of law school. Some people have to take multiple bars. I mean, when you tell people that you go through all of that, they're like, well, why did you do that to yourself? When you could have just been a popular influencer and made millions of dollars, there's like that mentality of, I don't have to do all that. And I can probably just make as much money or do some of the same things that you're doing. So what do you think? Do you have any thoughts on how we can encourage this next group to see why becoming a lawyer is still, this lawyers, doctors, that these professions are still important?
Yeah, I would tell young people not to only look to being a influencer, but a person of impact. I want to have an impact on this world. I don't want to just influence things, which that's important, but I want to be impactful. I believe that you can be much more impactful as a lawyer, a doctor, a judge on society than you can being an influencing someone to wear the latest fashions. I mean, that's good. That'll make you some money. It sells brands, but at the end of the day, in your obituary, who really is going to care if you encourage folks to wear J. Crew versus you kept someone off of death row. You got someone exonerated that was convicted, that was innocent. You served society in various roles. You formed an alternative sentencing program while you were on the bench, and you really helped better the criminal justice system from within. And so there are various things that you have to think about what kind of legacy that you want to leave. Because we know we have a dash. That's the time between birth and death. And you want to do something with your dash besides being an influencer. You want to be a person of impact.
I love that. So I'm gonna steal that, right? Right there.
Right.
I'll give you credit. I'll give you credit, but that's a great line. And I think that's the heart of helping to change or shape their minds and thinking beyond the instant gratification. That was great. So let's just say, okay, we've convinced a group of students become lawyers, right? They're like, all right, I'm going to give it a shot. I think this is something I like to debate. I like the law. What are your advice? Let's say someone's coming out of college. What is your best piece of advice for someone that is, trying to get into law school, survive law school? Because even if you're interested, let's be honest, everybody doesn't get in. Everybody doesn't stay and everybody doesn't pass the bar. So, I mean, you could be interested, but it's still a challenge. Do you have any general pieces of advice for people wanting to become attorneys?
Yeah, I always tell young people, don't count yourself out. Get out there and try. What's for you is for you. If you want it bad enough, you would do what it takes to get there. I started out pre-med. Someone asked me when I was 5 or 6 what I want to do. I want to be a lawyer. I was raised in a very religious background, and my parents suggested I become a physician instead of a lawyer because lawyers had to quote unquote lie. And so I listened to my parents. I followed their dreams for me, and I was pre-med my first few years of college, and then I eventually changed to pre-law because I was not doing as well in my natural science classes as I was doing stellar in my political science classes. So sometimes time will tell what your ultimate gift is or your ultimate trajectory should be. And so it was just a natural for me to go to law school instead of med school since I was doing so well in political science. So get out there and try. You can follow your dreams, follow your parents' dreams or whoever's dreams, but at some point, your natural God-given abilities will tell you what you're good at and will lead you to your destiny.
Which, speaking of which, it's one thing to be an attorney and there's another to be a judge, right? It's a different dynamic. And I'm sure you realized that when you first became a judge. Is there a reason why you said, let me try the judge hat? Was it just presented to you as an opportunity or you were already thinking about it?
I was not thinking about it. It was presented to me as an opportunity. One of my friends that I had supported for mayor happened to win, and he wanted to make some changes in the judicial branch of that city. And so he put the first 2 Black judges ever in that city on the bench. And he knew that we had similar thought processes. He knew I was not new to this, but I was true to it, and that I would do similar things, have a similar ideology on the bench as he has in the executive branch. And so they say success occurs when preparation and opportunity collide. And so I had been a lawyer for several years. Opportunity presented itself, and I decided to accept it. And so I get the best of both worlds. I'm a part-time municipal judge, and I also get to still practice law. And so it's just the best of both worlds. I get to change the system from the inside out. And most of the people that appear before a judge will appear before a judge like me, a municipal judge. That's the traffic citations, that's the misdemeanors, that's the weed charges, that's the additional appearances for up to murder. And so I get to have a great effect.
Right, or impact, as you say. That's gonna be your word. So last but not least, tell us, we hinted a little bit about the NBA, but tell us about your newly elected NBA president. You mentioned this is a great place, obviously, for people to network and get mentors. Tell us what you hope to accomplish as the new president. I know you were already involved with the organization for many, many years, so it was almost like foreshadowing that maybe you would become the president, but what do you hope to accomplish?
I just hope to be a voice, a loud voice, a strong major for justice. My theme for the year is Stand Up NBA, strong, tenacious advocacy for a new deal uplifting our people. When I say a new deal, I'm talking about a new deal. We have been dealt a raw deal for far too many years. It's time that we get a deal that includes passing the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, passing For the People Act, the Freedom to Vote Act. We need to pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. We need to get reparations. I know there's a bill to create a commission to study it. It's past time for study. It's time to implement it. We know that everyone else, Japanese, the Jews, others have received their reparations, but instead of Blacks receiving reparations, our slaveholders receive reparations. And it's high time after 402 years for us to get reparations. So I'm going to fight for that, just like I fought to have the Mississippi flag changed. After 126 years, that flag came down. But we had to fight over successive generations to get it down. We had to fight for reparations. But if we fight and never give up, we'll win. So that's what we're going to do. According to Black America, during this next year as president.
And correct me if I'm wrong, because in terms of the NBA was started because Blacks again weren't originally able to join the ABA. Is that okay? Okay, so I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was saying just the legacy of the NBA. There wasn't a place for us at that table, so NBA created a place in the legal community, and I don't know if a lot of people know that. So this is why it is important that if you are a Black attorney, you be a part of this association. Because I mean, before there was no other place. You had to be a part of the NBA. So for those of you guys who are listening, like I said, Obviously, he's the new president, but I think even if he wasn't the president, he would probably plug the NBA. It's a great place to start in terms of your networking and being a part of some of these initiatives that he just talked about. So if you're listening, tell a friend what the NBA is doing. Just want to transition quickly, and we're going to close out with the Black Excellence Moment of the Week. But I just want to transition quickly into some criminal justice reform topics. I know you just mentioned the George Floyd bill. It's amazing to me that they still haven't passed this, right? But you have the Asian American bill, hate crime bill. I think they passed. I don't even think it took a month. It's like as soon as the stuff started happening to the Asian Americans, and I don't have anything against Asian Americans, but I just think, what does T.I. say? Expeditiously. I mean, it just blows my mind that if we come up with any sort of legislation, there's heing and hawing, there's, I don't know, there's just so much politics when Blacks try to advance certain laws. And so I know Dave Chappelle right now is in the hot seat about various things. And I actually talked about that with my previous guest. But one thing, I don't care if you don't agree with anything else he has to say. One thing that is the truth that he said, when it comes to being Black, we just don't get advancement like other groups, right? Other groups, for whatever reason, whether it be LGBT, they can get a law passed very quickly. Asian Americans, they can get a law. It's true. We just don't get the same type of advancement. So he is not lying about that. That is a very true statement. And also something he said that I thought was pretty cool. You can't turn off being Black. You can't hide being Black. You can kind of turn off your sexuality. You don't have to let someone know what your sexuality is. You don't have to let someone know what your religion is. You can easily hide or not talk about those things. But when you walk in a room and you're Black, you're just Black. I mean, you can't, there's no turning that off. And I think with all the hoopla over his special, people miss that. People miss that he said that. So if you're listening, go back and watch that special. Give Dave a chance. Give Dave a chance. I'm not saying he's perfect. I'm not saying he hasn't offended. At this point, he's an equal. I call him an equal opportunity offender. He offends everybody, right? And most comedians do, right? They just offend everybody, and that way it's funny. But I can recognize that you can hurt feelings, right? But going back to the criminal justice reform cases, I just think, again, the George Floyd bill is an example of where that's not being advanced. And right now, we have the Ahmaud Arbery case. For the audience, obviously, that's been listening to me in all these episodes, knows that I'm the IP attorney for the Ahmaud Arbery and his foundation, and I work with his mom. And so I protect his brand, his trademarks, even in death, right? And so right now, the civil case is going on. Not the civil case, I'm sorry, the criminal state case, because there's a state and federal case against his killers. And so right now, they're in the process of jury selection. You're from the South, and this is the reason why sometimes I'm like, I don't know if I could even live in the South, because I'd probably be arrested right away. I'd probably be right in front of you, right? Because I don't have the temperament. If somebody, what do they say? You're not the one of the two. I'm not the one of the two. So I don't think I would do well in the South. I think that's why I've kind of stayed in more liberal cities. But what are your thoughts on how do you bring this case in front of a jury in places where, for the most part, the sentiment is racist? Like how do you do that? Because that's what they're facing literally as we speak, trying to put a decent jury pool together in a very racist place to go up against his shooters. So what are your thoughts on that?
Hope springs eternal. I'm still hoping for justice. It's going to take a lot of work, but I do believe they possibly could get a fair jury, but it only takes one person to hang up a jury. I can't imagine a full acquittal. If there's a diverse jury, there will not be a full acquittal in my estimation, but the $1 million question will get a conviction. So it would either be a conviction or a hung jury, in my estimate, based on what I can appreciate of the South. But if there's any diversity, 2 or more people of diverse backgrounds on the jury, I just can't see a full acquittal. So I'm also happy that there will be a federal prosecution have two shots at the apple. But there is a possibility there could be a conviction if you get the right jury on there. And we'll be watching closely.
Yes, and the Black Lawyers Podcast will obviously continue to follow this story. I speak to Ms. Wanda Cooper Jones almost on an every other day basis. So we're keeping her in prayers because it's very tense right now. I mean, the jury can make or break this case, as you mentioned, but we're hoping that justice will prevail and hope for the best outcome. Last but not least, we're going to do the Black Excellence Moment of the Week, and I think you will like this Black Excellence Moment of the Week. I'm always looking for really interesting stories. So our Black Excellence Moment of the Week goes to Samaria Dunson and Lawyer James. They made national headlines. They recently became judges in Montgomery, Alabama. And this is the first time in history that two siblings have simultaneously served as judges in the same courthouse. One is 42, one is 40, so they're in their early 40s, and they both became judges in the same courthouse. And I know you have that similar experience of being one of the first two Blacks. So we want to just give them a shout out. I love to see these stories because, again, like you said, they're not a lot of Black lawyers. They're definitely not a lot of Black judges. So that is our Black Excellence Moment of the Week. And we just want to thank you for just taking the time. We know you're very busy between being a practicing attorney, a judge, NBA president. People say I'm busy, but you sound like equally as busy, if not busier. And so we really appreciate that you took the time to speak to us today. Hopefully we can have you a part of some of events and future panels for the podcast. And again, we here at the Black Lawyers Podcast is rooting for everyone Black. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you.